At the edge of the town, where the streetlights flicker and the pavement gives way to cracked dirt roads, stands a house wrapped in shadows and silence, a place everyone calls the House of Dead. It is a name whispered with fear, a label that carries the weight of countless rumors and whispered warnings. People don't talk about it openly, and when they do, their voices drop to hushed tones, as if speaking too loudly might awaken whatever lingers within its walls. The house isn't just an old building. It's a symbol, a dark monument to the unknown, to the things we refuse to understand or confront. The history of the house is as patchy and fragmented as the peeling paint on its exterior. No one remembers exactly when it was built, only that it has stood there longer than anyone can recall. For years, it was just another home, though a little isolated, tucked away beyond the last block of comfortable houses. The family who lived there kept mostly to themselves, rarely seen at town gatherings or events. Neighbors heard noises, strange noises, late at night, faint cries, footsteps pacing the floor, whispers that seemed to float out through cracked windows. But no one ever had the courage to investigate. The house had an unspoken boundary, a line no one crossed after dark. Then, one winter, the family vanished. It was sudden, leaving behind everything. A dinner still on the table, coats hanging. In the closet, toys scattered on the floor. No note, no sign of struggle, no explanation. The doors were locked from the inside, the windows intact. It was as if the family had simply disappeared into thin air. The town was gripped by a strange mix of fear and curiosity. The house became a magnet for speculation, breeding stories that grew darker with each retelling. Some said the family was cursed. Others whispered about deals made with something ancient and unforgiving. The police investigation turned up nothing. The house gave up no secrets. Over the years, the House of Dead grew more than just a story. It grew an aura, a presence that seeped into the very soil around it. The air nearby seemed colder, heavier, as if the atmosphere itself was weighed down by sorrow and dread. Animals refused to enter the property. Even the wind avoided the broken eaves and shuttered windows, carrying a silence so complete it pressed on the ears. Those who dared to walk past at night reported a feeling of being watched, of eyes lurking behind the darkness, unseen but unblinking. Strange happenings began to multiply. Lights flickered on inside when no one was there. Sounds echoed through the empty rooms. Footsteps pacing the halls. Doors creaking open and shut. The faint sound of crying that melted into silence when you tried to listen more closely. People who lived nearby spoke of nightmares so vivid, they woke drenched in sweat, unable to shake the feeling of dread that followed them into the daylight. Some tried to enter, drawn by curiosity or disbelief, but turned back, their faces pale, their steps hurried and uneasy. Despite this, the house has never been torn down or repaired. It sits there like a scar on the neighborhood, a constant reminder of the unknown horrors it may hold. It is as if the house itself refuses to die, refusing to be forgotten, feeding on the fear and stories that surround it. Every generation learns of the House of Dead, not as a history lesson, but as a warning, a place where the past and present bleed into something dark and unexplainable. It is a place where silence has meaning and shadows move just beyond the edge of vision. For many, the House of Dead is not just a location, but a presence, a living nightmare that exists on the fringes of reality. It is a place where the walls remember and the floorboards whisper secrets best left unheard. A place where fear has taken root so deeply, it no longer needs a reason to exist. It simply is, waiting, watching, and perhaps waiting for the next soul foolish enough to step inside. The disappearance of the family who once lived in the House of Dead remains one of the most baffling mysteries the town has ever faced. It wasn't the kind of vanishing that leaves clues. A car abandoned on the side of the road, a frantic phone, call, or signs of struggle. Instead, it was as if the family had evaporated, leaving behind only silence and questions. The house was discovered empty one cold winter morning by a neighbor who had come to check on them after days without any sign of life. What they found inside was chilling. A home frozen in time. The dining table was set for dinner, plates still filled with half-eaten food, a candle flickering weakly as if recently lit. The fireplace held the faint smell of burning wood, and coats were hung neatly in the entryway. Toys lay scattered across the living room floor, as if the children had just stepped out for a moment. Everything was in place, until you noticed the absence. There was no one there. No sign of struggle, no notes, no footprints in the snow outside the house. The windows were locked from the inside, the doors bolted tight. Nothing had been stolen, nothing had been disturbed. The house was locked up and empty, yet not abandoned in the usual way. Local law enforcement was baffled. They combed through the house, searching for any hint of where the family might have gone or what might have happened to them. The investigation yielded nothing. No evidence of foul play, no indication of an accident, no trace of any outsiders' involvement. The family had simply vanished, leaving the house as an eerie monument to their sudden absence. Friends and relatives came by, confused and desperate for answers, but even they had no leads. It was as if the family had been swallowed by the very walls of the house. As the days passed, the house began to attract unwanted attention. People whispered theories, most of them dark and unsettling. Some said the family had fallen victim to a curse, a punishment for secrets long buried in the town's past. Others believed the house itself was alive, a malevolent force that claimed them as soon as they crossed its threshold. The story grew in the telling, each version more terrifying than the last. The house's reputation shifted from that of a mere abandoned property to something far more sinister, a place that took lives and swallowed souls. For years afterward, no one dared live in the house. Real estate agents refused to show it, neighbors avoided it, and children crossed the street to avoid walking past. People reported strange sounds, soft weeping, muffled cries, footsteps echoing in empty rooms. Shadows moved against broken windows, and lights flickered with no source of electricity. The house seemed to pulse with a dark energy, as if mourning its lost family while waiting patiently for the next victims. Despite the growing fear, some could not resist the lure of the House of Dead. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and curious trespassers ventured inside, only to return shaken or never return at all. Their stories spoke of cold spots that sapped their strength, fleeting glimpses of figures in the corners of their eyes, and overwhelming feelings of dread pressing on their chests. Some claimed they heard voices, whispers calling their names or begging for help, echoing through the hollow rooms. Others spoke of waking nightmares and shadows that clung to them long after they left. The house's history and the family's disappearance became intertwined, impossible to separate. The mystery of what happened to them remains unanswered, feeding the house's legend and the town's fear. The more people speculated, the more the story grew, twisting and turning with every retelling. Was it something the family did? Something they saw? Or was the house itself responsible? A dark entity that traps those who enter and never lets them go. In time, the disappearance became less about the missing family and more about the house itself, a symbol of loss, fear, and the unknown. It stood as a warning, a reminder that some places are better left alone, some secrets are too dangerous to uncover, and some disappearances are meant to remain mysteries forever. The house waits, silent and watchful, holding on to its secrets, ready to claim the next who dare come too close. Visitors to the House of Dead have all reported strange and unexplainable phenomena that defy logic and chill the very marrow of their bones. The house seems to exist outside the natural laws, a place where the ordinary twists into the terrifying, and the unseen reveals itself in the faintest flickers of light or whispered sounds. Even the most skeptical who entered have been forced to confront something they cannot explain. The reports vary, but certain details appear again and again, painting a picture of a place haunted not just by ghosts, but by an overwhelming presence that twists reality itself. One of the most common phenomena reported is the flickering of lights inside the house. Visitors describe how the old chandeliers and wall sconces suddenly blaze to life with a sickly glow before plunging the rooms back into darkness. Sometimes the light pulses in rhythm with a distant heartbeat, or flashes quickly as if trying to communicate. The eerie illumination reveals glimpses of figures standing just beyond the corner of vision, shapes that vanish the moment they are fully seen. It is as if the house itself breathes with a strange, unsteady life, flickering between this world and another. Whispers are another chilling hallmark. They come unbidden, soft and unintelligible at first, almost like a breeze rustling through dry leaves. But as visitors strain to listen, the whispers grow clearer, forming fractured words and desperate pleas. Names are called in broken voices, sometimes commands, sometimes cries for help. The whispers seem to seep from the very walls, wrapping around anyone who dares to listen. They are disorienting, filling the mind with confusion and fear, as if the house is trying to draw people deeper into its dark secrets. Visitors also speak of shadows that move on their own. These are not mere tricks of light, but solid, shifting forms that dart across hallways or linger at the edges of rooms. Sometimes, these shadows take on vaguely human shapes, watching silently from the darkness. Others seem more monstrous, with distorted limbs and twisted faces glimpsed in the corner of the eye. Attempts to approach these shadows are met with sudden cold or the feeling of being pushed back, as if invisible walls block the way. The shadows are not merely ghosts, they are guardians, or perhaps prisoners themselves, bound to the house by forces unknown. Another terrifying phenomenon is the sudden drops in temperature. Visitors have described entire rooms freezing in seconds, their breath turning to mist, fingers numb with cold. This chilling cold often precedes other supernatural events. A shadow moving closer, a whisper growing louder, or objects shifting inexplicably. The temperature can swing wildly, plunging one moment into bone-chilling frost before rising to stifling heat. This erratic behavior adds to the sense that the house is alive and unpredictable, a hostile entity that toys with those who enter. Mirrors inside the house are said to reflect more than just the present moment. Some visitors claim to see their own reflections twisted or distorted, faces aging rapidly or morphing into something grotesque. Others report seeing figures standing behind them in the glass, only to turn and find empty rooms. The mirrors seem to act as portals or windows into other realms, showing glimpses of the past, or perhaps the house's twisted present. They distort reality, making it difficult to trust what the eyes see and increasing the overwhelming sense of dread. Finally, many who enter the House of Dead describe an oppressive atmosphere that weighs on the spirit. It's a heavy feeling of despair, sorrow, and rage that clings to the air like a thick fog. People feel watched constantly, as if unseen eyes follow their every move. Some experience nausea, headaches, or a crushing sense of loneliness that settles deep in their bones. This psychological assault seems to weaken visitors over time, eroding their resolve and making them easier prey for whatever inhabits the house. These paranormal phenomena are not isolated incidents, but a tapestry of experiences that weave together to create a terrifying reality. The house does not merely haunt a place, it haunts minds and hearts, breaking down the barriers between the living and the dead, the real and the unreal. Each visitor leaves changed, carrying with them the heavy knowledge that the House of Dead is far more than just a building. It is a living nightmare. The House of Dead doesn't just affect the senses, it invades the very core of those who enter, twisting their minds and bodies in ways that are both subtle and terrifying. Visitors don't simply walk through empty rooms, they encounter a presence that seeps into their thoughts, playing on their fears and memories, breaking down their mental defenses until reality itself feels fragile and unreliable. The house exerts a powerful influence, one that leaves lasting scars long after someone manages to escape its walls. One of the most disturbing effects reported is a creeping sense of paranoia. People feel as though they are being watched constantly, even when they are alone in the darkest corners of the house. This sensation is accompanied by an overwhelming anxiety that builds with each step deeper inside. Sounds that once seemed distant grow unnervingly close. The rustling of unseen footsteps, soft breathing right behind, or the faintest scrape against the floor. This paranoia is so intense that it causes some visitors to panic, fleeing without explanation and avoiding the house for years afterward. Beyond paranoia, many experience vivid hallucinations, visions that blend memories with terrifying illusions. Visitors often describe seeing distorted versions of themselves or loved ones, faces twisted in anguish or horror. These hallucinations aren't limited to fleeting glimpses. They can feel as real as waking life, complete with smells, sounds, and emotions. Some report reliving traumatic events from their past, forced to confront buried fears and regrets. The house seems to prey on the mind's deepest vulnerabilities, making every nightmare feel real and inescapable. Physical symptoms also manifest in those who linger too long. Sudden dizziness, nausea, and chills are common, as if the house's energy disrupts the body's balance. Some feel as though invisible hands grip their limbs or throat, squeezing with an unrelenting pressure that leaves bruises or marks. Others find their voices faltering, words caught in their throats as if the house is stealing their ability to call for help. These physical manifestations often coincide with episodes of disorientation, where visitors lose track of time or find themselves unable to remember how they entered a room. Sleep disturbances plague those who survive the house's influence. Nightmares follow them home, often more vivid and terrifying than anything they experienced inside. Many report waking in cold sweat, heart pounding, with the feeling of unseen eyes watching from the shadows of their own bedrooms. The line between dreams and reality blurs, making it difficult to trust their senses. Insomnia, anxiety, and depression often set in, turning everyday life into a struggle against the lingering presence that refuses to let go. Some who encounter the house report changes in behavior that alarm friends and family. Once calm and rational individuals become withdrawn, suspicious, or aggressive without clear cause. Relationships fray as loved ones fail to understand the sudden shifts in personality. The house seems to fragment their sense of self, isolating them in a world where nothing feels safe or certain. This psychological breakdown can lead to self-destructive actions or deep despair, as the weight of the house's influence grows heavier with time. The house also seems to manipulate time and space, causing visitors to lose their bearings. People have become hopelessly lost inside, wandering the same hallways for hours or days, unable to find exits or familiar landmarks. Rooms shift and change, doors lead to impossible places, and staircases twist into darkness. This distortion of reality breaks down mental resistance, making escape feel impossible and trapping victims in an endless nightmare loop. Despite all these horrors, the House of Dead's most frightening power may be its ability to trap souls, binding them to its cursed walls. Those who fall under its influence often return changed, carrying an invisible tether that pulls them back again and again. Some never leave at all, becoming part of the house's growing collection of restless spirits, forever caught between life and death, feeding the darkness that lurks within. The house's influence extends far beyond the physical structure. It invades minds, fractures reality, and turns hope into despair. It preys on the weakest parts of human nature, exploiting fears and vulnerabilities until those who enter are no longer themselves. The House of Dead is not just haunted, it is a living, breathing force of terror that consumes all who cross its threshold. The House of Dead has attracted many investigators over the years, paranormal experts, ghost hunters, thrill seekers, all drawn by the dark allure of its mystery and the promise of uncovering its secrets. Yet, despite the number of those who have ventured inside with cameras, recording devices, and scientific equipment, none have returned with clear answers. Instead, their stories are filled with terror, failure, and unexplained phenomena that only deepen the house's legend. These failed investigations have only added to the fear that the house is more than just haunted. It is a place where even the bravest lose their grip on reality. One of the most famous groups to investigate was a team of experienced paranormal researchers who arrived equipped with the latest technology: thermal cameras, EVP recorders, and electromagnetic field detectors. They set up their base inside the house and spent several nights monitoring every sound, movement, and energy spike. At first, the recordings were inconclusive, only faint noises and unexplained temperature drops. But as the nights went on, the atmosphere grew heavier, and the team members began to experience personal distress. Some reported hearing voices, whispering their names, while others felt unseen forces brushing past them or tugging at their clothes. Sleep deprivation and fear took their toll, and after just 3 nights, the team abandoned the investigation, leaving behind much of their equipment. Other ghost hunters attempted similar expeditions, each hoping to capture definitive evidence of the supernatural. Some returned with footage showing strange lights darting across empty rooms, shadows shifting in unnatural ways, or eerie orbs floating in the darkness. However, the videos often ended abruptly, lost in static or corrupted files, as if the house itself interfered with their technology. Those who stayed too long reported feeling physically drained and emotionally shattered, many developing unexplained illnesses or psychological trauma after leaving. Several investigators have shared terrifying accounts of encounters with entities inside the house. One well-known story involves a man who ventured into the basement with a flashlight and suddenly found himself surrounded by cold, whispering voices that grew louder until he could no longer hear his own thoughts. In a panic, he fled, only to discover later that his equipment had recorded unexplainable sounds resembling chants or prayers. Another team member described being touched by invisible hands that left bruises on his arms, a sensation so real that it caused him to collapse in fear. The house also seems to resist attempts to study it scientifically. Devices malfunction, batteries die inexplicably, and even the most advanced sensors pick up nothing consistent. The environment inside the house defies logic, changing unexpectedly as if controlled by an unseen will. Some investigators believe the house manipulates space and time, trapping those inside in a loop that distorts their perception and makes objective study impossible. Over time, many researchers have come to see the House of Dead not just as a haunted location, but as a malevolent force. It's a place that tests human limits, preying on fear and pushing people to the edge of sanity. Some paranormal experts warn against entering the house at all, believing that its energy is too dangerous and that no technology or method can truly capture its dark nature. The few who persist often return traumatized, bearing warnings of things best left undisturbed. The failures of these investigations have only fueled the legend, turning the House of Dead into a modern-day myth. Its reputation spreads beyond the town, attracting attention from thrill-seekers and skeptics alike, but also warnings from those who have suffered inside its walls. It stands as a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, and that some places are best left alone. Each failed attempt to uncover the truth adds another layer of fear and respect. The house remains silent, watching and waiting, defying all who try to unlock its secrets. It is a prison, a trap, and a warning. A place where courage can quickly turn to terror and where the unknown lurks just beyond the reach of human understanding. The investigators who return are changed forever, carrying with them proof not of answers, but of a haunting that no one can escape. Over the years, countless stories and rumors have woven themselves into the dark tapestry of the House of Dead, transforming it from an abandoned building into a legend whispered about in hushed tones across the town and beyond. These tales, passed from one generation to the next, have blurred the lines between fact and fiction, creating an atmosphere thick with fear and mystery. Each new account adds a fresh layer of dread as people recount strange encounters, unexplained disappearances, and terrifying events connected to the house. Some stories describe desperate attempts by the missing family to communicate from beyond the grave. People claim to have heard faint cries for help carried on the wind around the property, or to have seen ghostly figures wandering the grounds at dusk. Others speak of objects moving on their own, doors slamming shut without warning, and chilling cold spots that make the hairs on the back of the neck stand up. These tales are often dismissed as superstition, but the sheer number of witnesses makes it impossible to ignore. The house's presence looms large in local folklore, becoming a symbol of the unknown and the dangers lurking just beneath the surface of everyday life. One persistent rumor suggests that the house was built on cursed land, a place where ancient rituals once took place. According to this legend, the foundation itself is soaked with dark energy, a magnet for restless spirits and malevolent forces. Some say the family that disappeared disturbed something ancient and powerful, unleashing a curse that doomed them to vanish without a trace. This theory feeds into the stories of shadowy figures and strange noises, offering a possible explanation for the house's terrifying influence. Whether true or not, it's a story that keeps people away and fuels the fear that the house is more than just a physical structure. It's a gateway to something far darker. Other accounts focus on the psychological impact the house has on those who enter or even live nearby. People talk about a heavy feeling of despair that clings to the air, a suffocating sadness that seeps into the soul. Some who have spent time in the vicinity report nightmares filled with shadowy figures and endless hallways, waking to find strange marks on their bodies or unexplained bruises. The house's influence seems to extend beyond its walls, affecting minds and bodies alike. These experiences have been shared in online forums, local gatherings, and even in news reports, creating a network of stories that reinforce the house's reputation as a place of fear and danger. Despite the warnings, some people are drawn to the House of Dead, compelled by curiosity or a desire to challenge the unknown. These visitors often become part of the house's ongoing story, their own experiences adding new chapters to the legend. Some claim to have narrowly escaped after encounters with dark presences, while others report lasting psychological scars. The house feeds on this attention, growing stronger with every frightened heartbeat and every whispered tale told around a campfire. The media has also played a role in shaping the house's terrifying reputation. Documentaries, podcasts, and news stories have spread the story far beyond the local community, attracting paranormal enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Each retelling adds dramatic flair, emphasizing the most frightening elements and sometimes embellishing details for effect. This media attention has helped cement the House of Dead as a symbol of supernatural terror, a place where the boundaries between reality and nightmare dissolve. In the end, the stories and rumors surrounding this House of Dead serve as a collective warning. They remind us that some places hold memories too dark to confront, that some mysteries are wrapped in layers of fear and silence. The house stands as a monument to the unknown, a physical embodiment of human fear of death, disappearance, and the unseen forces that may lurk just beyond the veil. It challenges anyone who hears its story to question what they believe about the world and what horrors might be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered.